Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Captain Fi, the Financial Independence Podcast. G'day guys, and welcome to an episode of Captain Fi, the Financial Independence Podcast, where I open the cockpit to chat with some of the best and brightest in personal finance, as well as those who've reached or are on their way to reaching financial independence. Today's forecast is financial independence for beginners. So, what is financial independence? Financial independence occurs when your investments generate enough income that it exceeds your cost of living. You can really do this two ways. You can either have a really high income from your investments, or you could have a more moderate income from your investments and a fairly low cost of living. You can see there's an infinite number of combinations that could meet the criteria of reaching financial independence. Really though, what does it do for you? Financial independence gives you the choice to direct your time and therefore your energy into things that you truly value rather than the things you don't, like working that 9-to-5 grind. Because your income is coming from passive investment sources such as real estate or low-cost index funds, you don't actually need to go out and earn a living. You don't need to get that paycheck. You don't need to have a boss, and you don't need to spend all that money that you normally would trying to earn the money, like a car, professional subscriptions, insurance, all that kind of stuff. At its heart, I think the FI movement is really just about common sense, really, using the core principles of mindfulness, good old efficiency, optimization, and minimalism, and really living below your means is how you achieve financial independence. It can seem pretty daunting at first, and when you start getting into the financial independence community and you start reading about it online, there's some pretty impressive stats out there from people like Mr. Money Moustache and the Mad Fientist, and even closer to home, the Aussie Firebug from Australia. And they have some pretty amazing savings rates and investments, and it can be really daunting for someone who's looking at this for the first time. But investments really are a snowball. Once you get started and that ball gets rolling, it gets massive. And when you see those dividends and you see the growth in your assets, it changes the way you think. I know for personally, the first dividend payment that I got, I was hooked. I was like, oh my God, like you're telling me that I can buy this thing and 4 times a year it's just going to give me free money. Like it just throws off free money and that goes straight into my account, and I can use that. I can spend that on anything, or I can reinvest that and take advantage of compound interest to really get those investments to grow even quicker. But I guess when you start, it can be so daunting, and people are inherently afraid of something that's new and something that, change. I mean, even in my role as a professional pilot, something we often joke about in the cockpit is saying, there's 2 things we hate, and that's change and the way things are. So, pilots usually find a way to complain about stuff. So I guess you just don't need to be afraid to break out of the formation with everyone else. So just because everyone does something doesn't mean it's a good idea. Really, when you're looking to take your first steps to financial independence, it's an introspective period. You need to review your own personal goals and values, and then figure out if it is for you. Not everyone does want to quit their job, but reaching financial independence certainly provides a big factor of safety. And me personally, it's something that I want to achieve before starting a family. Some people will often say money isn't everything. All right, Captain Fi, you seem to love optimizing and compounding and buying your investments and shares, and you're very good with numbers, but money's not going to buy you happiness. And first of all, I'd say, if you think money can't buy you happiness, clearly you're shopping at the wrong places, because money can buy me an airplane, and I have a lot of fun flying airplanes, I can tell you that. Actually, flying instructing has been one of the most awesome, rewarding jobs I've ever done. Unfortunately, it's not super lucrative, but maybe after I reach FI, that could be something that I'm going to look at. So, yes, I agree. Money can't buy you happiness per se, but what money can do is help you avoid things which are unpleasant. For example, working long hours or living away from home, away from your family. So, at its core, I think happiness is a result of good health, relationships, and wealth. So if you want to take a step back and, psychology, and I'm not a psychologist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do remember learning as an instructor about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow's hierarchy is about essentially fulfilling basic requirements first, and then we sort of progress up the pyramid or up the hierarchy to progressively more creative fulfillment. So, for example, shelter and food come in right at the bottom as the core foundations of the hierarchy. And then as you go up, you're looking at relationships and finally self-actualization. So a really good example of Maslow's hierarchy of needs in action, I actually found when I was teaching a young lady to fly. Now, she was having a little bit of difficulty with landing the aircraft. And as you might imagine, landing an aircraft is one of the most, if not the most important skills that a pilot can have to safely bring the aircraft down after a long flight. And it's usually the thing you're remembered by, whether that's a good thing or not. Like, maybe you gently greased the wheels onto the runway and it's a nice smooth landing and nobody's felt it. Or maybe you've messed up and you've just plonked it on and everyone's felt it. So it took a couple of sessions working with her to really fix the issue. But what was happening was her fear and stress of hitting the runway was actually kicking in her body's natural fight, flight, or freeze mechanism, which is a physiological thing. It's physical, it's not a mental thing, and that's pretty unfortunate for a pilot. So as she was approaching the flare and the landing, she would freeze up on the controls, and as a result, I would need to take over. So one of the ways I overcame that was I thought, well, gee, she's afraid of hitting the ground. Let's just show her what hitting the ground feels like. And so I just had a bit of fun. We came in and I did some, harder landings, which, usually you try and avoid, just to demonstrate that, hey, the world's not going to end if you bang it on. So after a few of those, she realised that it's actually a bit of a non-event, and the distraction really went away. And she was able to complete the landing module and went on to successfully complete her pilot training. And she's now even flying for the Air Force. So it just goes to show that by focusing on the basics at the base or the foundation of Maslow's hierarchy, and then you can work on progressing to those higher rungs. So why is this relevant to financial independence? Well, like we were saying, money can't buy you happiness, but things it can buy are, it can pay your rent, it can buy your food, it can pay for gas in your car, it can pay to register your car, it can buy you food. The fact is that money in our society is a way that we exchange our time. So, and when you think about currency as well, actually, this isn't $1. This is actually X amount of my time. Say you work and you're getting paid in retail, you $20 an hour, and you decide to go out to see a movie, and you get a choc top and some popcorn, and with the ticket it comes to $40 somehow. You think, oh wow, I'm not buying this with $40. I'm buying this with 2 hours of my time. And it's actually more than that, because remember, you've paid income tax, so but that's a whole nother story, and we'll leave that for another podcast. So while money might not make you happy per se, it's going to allow you to satisfy the foundational criteria of Maslow's hierarchy, food, safety, shelter, and therefore it lays the preconditions for happiness, as it's going to allow you time to focus on those creative endeavours or passion projects. So a lot of the times in the FI or the FIRE community, you hear about people wanting to achieve financial independence so they can quit their job. Now, not everybody wants to quit their job. So when you think about it, financial independence could give you the flexibility to work more hours that suit you, such as part-time or reduced hours. Some people even choose to have a 5-day weekend, and if your boss doesn't like it, well, there's a reason it's almost universally referred to as FU money. So that's the whole semi-retired, kind of care, kind of don't mentality. Another benefit that reaching financial independence has is it gives you the ability to redirect your employment. It means you have the option to branch out into a new career field, commence a course of study, or even start a business without the worry or time constraint of having to earn a wage and having to put food on the table. So for many people, the opportunity to redirect their time and energy into these new forms of creative employment can be incredibly satisfying, and has led to the creation of many successful businesses. Businesses which in turn can produce you income and can be systemized and put on autopilot. And ultimately, who doesn't love holidays? Reaching financial independence means that you can go on holiday forever if you want. Geographic arbitrage, as detailed in the 4-hour work week, it is the process of basically living on a permanent vacation and taking advantage of the difference in exchange rates and the prices of goods and services. So, for example, in Australia, a lot of people might be looking at moving to or conducting holidays in Southeast Asia, where you can get where that Aussie dollar stretches a lot further. Just like how American holidayers might choose to head south down into Mexico or parts of South America, where they can stretch their dollars even further. And I guess the last bit about reaching financial independence is you can always retire eventually. As we said, quitting your job, it's not for everyone, but the numbers don't lie. And when your passive income from investing exceeds your cost of living, you don't need to work anymore. You've reached FI. That's it. You've hit it. It's a huge jump and not something everyone is ready to go for straight away. So you might have hit FI, but there's still a little lingering, is this really going to work? Have I done my numbers correctly? And if this sounds like you, financial independence might be something that gives you the option to retire eventually when you're ready. So the side bonus to that is because you're already financially independent, your portfolio is just going to grow larger and larger each day that you work, giving you a bigger cushion and reducing your risk and giving you even more cash flow and passive income. So it can be a very insidious situation, which really raises the question, when is enough enough? And it can sort of lead to a bit of analysis paralysis, delay and hesitation. So that's just inherent for some of those personalities, but eventually you'll have enough to take the leap. So that's a little bit about FI and happiness and why I do it. The next question is, how do I do it? So smart investors are able to reach financial independence by living below their means and continually investing in assets. So assets or productive assets are basically things that make you money. So that could be a investment property where you're renting out a house and you have a tenant that's providing some cash flow and paying down your mortgage whilst you're receiving capital growth, and maybe it's cash flow positive, so it's actually providing you cash each week, which you can be paying your groceries with. Assets also include the stock market, and everyone will probably know from the site by now that I'm an avid fan of low-cost stock market index funds, and these are the ETF or exchange-traded funds and LICs or listed investment companies, which you'll hear about quite a lot. Other assets can include intellectual property. So maybe you've written a book or you've got a course and you're offering those for sale. And you can get the royalties from those just ticking off in the background. Other forms of assets include bonds and cash, although those are two things that in the current climate aren't super lucrative. But the point is, an asset is something that makes you money, directly opposed to a liability, which is something that costs you money. So a liability, for example, could be credit card debt. It could be a loan on a car. It could be a ridiculously big car that you don't need. So, you're driving around in a big four-wheel drive when all you really do is drive 2Ks down to the shops and back once on Sunday. So by living below your means and investing in assets, eventually you're going to hit FI. So when it comes to the steps, the first thing is, as we said before, to educate yourself. And now that includes an introspection. You need to review your level of knowledge at the moment. You've got to be honest with yourself. And you shouldn't be investing in things you don't understand. That's one of Warren Buffett's best pieces of advice. And for anyone who doesn't know, Warren Buffett is sometimes referred to as the Oracle of Omaha and is undoubtedly the world's best investor. And he says you should never invest in something you don't understand. So step one is educate yourself. Review your knowledge, your values, and your goals. Step two is make a budget. And this is really key because this is part of the whole living below your means thing. You need to track your budget, track your expenses, and track your needs. So, creating a budget can be difficult, but the first step really is just getting a printout of your bank statement. So I'd say go electronic for everything. So ditch the cash, just use your card for a couple of months, get a really good understanding of your purchase history, and go through your budget, detail where you're spending all your money, and that's going to give you a really good understanding of where that money's going. So, even the most sturdiest ship can be sunk by lots of little holes in the hull. So that means you can have a really high income. You can be a professional. You can be earning six figures. But if you're going out and you're spending $10, $20 regularly on, food or whatever, that really does add up over time. And, what does it cost to waste $10,000 a year? I think it's something like $27 a day. So it adds up. So once you've got a really good understanding of just how much you're actually spending, you need to rein it in. So step 3 is reduce your expenses. So you want to be mindful with your expenses, but you still got to have fun. If you start being really brutal, it's probably not going to work out. You need to do these things sustainably. So maybe just aim, okay, I'm going to reduce my expenses by 20% or even 10% to start off with. And then each month or each couple of months, you're going to aim to try and bring that back by, another 5 or another 10% until you get to a position that you're happy with. So, for example, my goal, I'm striving for at least an 80% plus savings rate. So that means I don't want to save at least 80% of the income that hits my account, plus my superannuation contributions. I want that to be more equal to or greater than 80%. And I've not been doing too bad. Unfortunately, a few months I've really taken a few blows to the old savings rate. But on average, we're actually around that 80% mark, which is where I set my goal. And remember, step 1, part of educating yourself was really setting some of those goals. Ways that you can get really creative with reducing your expenses, and I've published a lot of articles on ways you can reduce your cost of living and get more efficiency out of your purchases, as well as maybe some things that you can live without on your goal to on your journey to financial independence. So step 4 is to create a savings buffer. So this is really important. So because you've budgeted and you've reduced your expenses, hopefully you've freed up a little bit of cash, or maybe you even have a little bit of surplus cash or a bit of savings tucked away somewhere. Maybe you can sell some of your things, and I've got an article about how to sell your things online. So eBay, and online classifieds like Craigslist and Gumtree are fantastic ways that you can not only get a bit of money to create a savings buffer, but you're also just getting rid of your crap and your old junk, which I can't believe it, but people buy it. One man's trash is another man's treasure. So you need a savings buffer. It's going to be critical in dealing with life's ups and downs, or the volatility, and you should really aim for about $2,000 before considering even spending on non-essentials. So one of the benefits of having a decent savings buffer like that is you can really start to save on your insurance. So that savings buffer actually forms a sort of self-insurance policy or own insurance policy. So an example is my auto car insurance. So I had initially a fully comprehensive policy, which is full insurance, which means if there's any accident, I'm covered regardless of who's at fault. Now, I thought that was a really good deal and it gave me peace of mind. But it was costing me over $1,000 per year in premiums. And oh, by the way, if I did have an accident, there was still a pretty sizable excess of, I think it was $1,500. When I realized that actually my car probably doesn't need comprehensive insurance, and I transitioned to a third-party insurance, or the other person insurance, which means if I have an accident and I damage someone's car, their car is covered, but my car isn't. I actually saved a heap of money on my premium. So I went from spending something like $1,000 or $2,000 a year all the way down to now I pay just under $200. And that gives me the peace of mind knowing that if I hit a Porsche or a Lamborghini that it's not going to financially ruin me. And that's what insurance should be. Insurance should be protection for something that is going to financially destroy you. So that's a really important realization on the path to financial independence, because it allows you to free up a lot of cash flow that you would have normally spent on fear, which is essentially insurance. Now remember, insurance companies aren't, now actuarians are highly trained and highly educated people, statisticians, that they're basically going to work out what is the likelihood of your catastrophic event happening, how frequent is that going to happen, what is the likelihood of them having to pay out, and so how can they adjust your premiums to make sure that if you do have a claim, they're still going to make money. So in the long run, if you just kept that money in your pocket, you're actually going to come out on top. So for some things like, say, a home, like real estate and investment property, I would have that insured because, look, I don't have the money sitting around to just buy another investment property or rebuild. When I can work in the cash flow of insurance into the deal, I'm going to include insurance for that. So again, insuring against something that will financially destroy you. Taking it back to the car example, because I was saving, almost $1,000 a year in premiums by switching from comprehensive to third-party insurance, I was able to take that money and put that into my savings buffer, which meant if I did have an accident and my car is written off, I've got that cash to go out and buy another car, whilst that third-party policy would cover the opposite. So it's super important to have a savings buffer. Emergencies happen. You might need emergency travel, whether that's booking tickets to fly interstate or overseas for family. Especially if you have kids or especially if you have pets, you really need a savings buffer and an emergency fund. And that should be at least $2,000. The step number 5, or the next step to financial independence, is boosting your income. And this is a great one. You can have a lot of fun with it. Basically, make more money from your job and start hustling. Create a side hustle or 2 or 3 or 4. Just be mindful of your time commitments. Make more money. People generally get what they're worth, and if you improve your self-worth and self-recognition and you take that to your employer, you may successfully negotiate a raise. And I did this with my job. I actually had a pretty big case where I went to my boss, my supervisor, through human relations, and basically said, "No, look, I want more. This isn't right. This is what the award wage should be. This is what the company policy should be, and this is how much I think I deserve." And look, it took a while. It was a lot of effort, but I can tell you right now, it was 100% worth it. I actually got a raise of, it was over 30%. It was a huge increase. And not only did I get an increase in my salary, they actually backpaid me, which isn't usual. That often won't happen, but I actually got backpaid a chunk of money, which I was able to put into my investments. And I also got recently a settlement with my superannuation or my retirement accounts through the company, where that's going to provide me some security for later on in life. And that helps me out now too, because, really when you talk about financial independence and retirement, if you do choose to retire early, so in your 30s, that early retirement portfolio is going to keep you from, say 30 into your 60s. Well, when you're 60, that's when a conventional retirement would be planned. So you still need to survive from that 60 onwards. So having those tax-sheltered retirement accounts, whether that's your 401k, 403b, IRA, Roth IRA, or in Australia, your superannuation, it is super important to have those. And taking advantage of maxing out your contributions into those accounts is a very smart move, and it's going to save you quite a bit on your tax as well. So there was step 5, was boost your income. So don't be afraid to negotiate. Remember, everything is up for negotiation, and if anyone tells you otherwise, they don't know what they're talking about. Side hustles. So you are limited by your imagination. What are some side hustles that I did? So we've already talked about eBay selling. So I got rid of some of my junk, and I used that to fund a savings buffer or an emergency fund. There's nothing stopping you from buying something deliberately with the idea that you're going to then resell it. And that's called arbitrage, and a lot of people do that. I've seen people loading up on toys at the supermarket because they know it's a limited run. They're loading up on them and they're going to sell them for more on eBay. It's just like ticket scalpers, they buy the tickets, they wait for the prices to go up and they sell them. So look, I'm not going to argue about the ethics about whether this is right or wrong, but that's an option that's available to you if you're looking to make more money. I know other people in the area that started dog walking businesses, walking dogs every morning. So and she was going to do that anyway, walking her own dog for her own health. So now she takes other dogs with her and gets paid. I think it's like $20 a week extra. For a couple of walks a day for something she enjoys doing in her leisure time, and she's getting paid for it. Just think about anything that you have skills in or anything that you're good at which other people might want. So, if you're good at graphic design, then, you could look at freelancing some design work. There are a heap of really free or cheap tools. For example, Canva is pretty cheap tool you could use for graphic design, and you could get to work using outsourcing apps and websites like Fiverr or Upwork, where people will post the tasks that they want done and you can bid for them. If you're looking for more inspiration for ways to boost your income, check out the site, captainfire.com. I've got a few articles on that. And, what else is your friend is YouTube. There are literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of videos on passive income and side hustles and how to make more money. So literally just get at it. You're limited by your imagination. Figure out how to make some money. So the next step is to really pay off any debt. So you want to ditch all of your liabilities. So if you have debt other than productive debt, say like a home loan or a mortgage, which are good debts because they're working for you as long as you've appropriately cash flowed and the numbers in the deal stack up. Any debt that's used, so for example, credit card debt, personal loans, you financed a car, payment plans, those kind of things. That's what you want to get rid of. So when you're paying off debt, there's a couple of ways you can do it. So, two of the most popular methods of paying down debt are the snowball method and the debt avalanche method. So the snowball method, it starts by paying off your smallest debts first, and then using the surplus cash flow that was going into that small debt to then tackle the next debt. And that's sometimes been referred to as dominoing your debts. And that's actually super important from like a psychological point of view, because you really are seeing the benefits. You're seeing that extra cash flow, which is basically less money coming out of your accounts every day. So the second way of paying off your debt is the debt avalanche technique. And this is probably a little bit more of an analytical one, and it's just paying off the debt with the highest interest rate first. So, for example, say you might have a $200 interest-free period on some furniture that you bought, and that's interest-free. but you might have a credit card debt of $1,000 being charged at 20%. So obviously, you save the most money by paying down that high interest rate credit card first. So the debt avalanche is going to save you more money in the long run, but it doesn't give you the warm and fuzzy sort of psychological feeling of accomplishment of dominating your debts with the debt snowball. Either way, step 6, pay off any debt. Get rid of any liabilities. And liabilities don't have to necessarily be strictly debt. If you're driving a car that's quite frankly ridiculous for your needs, say you're just driving around the city, it's just you in the car, and you're driving a big 4-wheel drive and you never take it off of the road, that's a liability. Okay, you're much better off driving a small, economical 4-cylinder petrol car, or even better, bicycling around. But if you have to drive something that's sensible. So that's another example of a liability. So step 7. So just to recap, you've educated yourself, you've made a budget, you've reduced your expenses, you've created a savings buffer of at least $2,000, you've boosted your income, you've paid off your debt and gotten rid of liabilities. Now this is where the fun starts. This is where you get to start investing. Step 7, invest your savings. So start investing your capital to get rich slowly. And now this is the thing that really blew my mind when I discovered FI and investing, is that you're telling me that I can take my money and I can buy this thing, I can invest in this thing, and it's just going to give me back money. So I started investing in exchange traded funds, in ETFs, and 4 times a year I got the dividends from Vanguard and from AFIC, and they just threw off cash, and it really changed my mind, and I was hooked, and I knew that this is real, and this is something that this can really improve my life. And I actually went back to step 1 and did it all again, and I did it again and again, trying to get more and more efficient and have a more savings rate so that I could really throw as much as possible into investing while I'm younger and while I have time for compound interest to really work its magic. So where to get started investing? Well, like we said in step 1, you need to read everything. You need to immerse yourself in it. And look, that's something not everyone is prepared to do. So get started investing. Get started. Just get some skin in the game. Whether that's be, just a small amount of money. I started with $1,000, which I put into the Australian Foundation Investment Company, AFIC, which it's a funny story about how I actually bought that. I was a bit silly. For some reason, I thought it was like a concreting company. Like I thought foundation meant, that they invested in like concrete and pouring foundations. So, and I actually bought the company thinking that that's what it did. And I laugh about it now, but remember Warren Buffett's golden rule is don't invest in something you don't understand. So I learned not to actually do that. So you want to refer to step 1, educate yourself, but you've got to start somewhere. Okay, don't let that analysis paralysis get you. Just get some skin in the game. Whether it's a small amount of money that you're prepared to lose and you need for the next 5 to 7 years. My advice is either look at AFIC, but they're not a concreting company, by the way. It's a listed investment company, so they take your money and invest in other productive businesses. But look, we'll talk about AFIC another time. But my recommendation is just start small, get some skin in the game, and once you get that first dividend, I'll tell you, you will be hooked. So investing, you don't have to just invest in ETFs. You've got to real estate, websites. There's all sorts of things that you can invest your money in. But like I said, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a professional. But where I have personally invested my money is a combination of those three things. So if you do want to get started buying stocks, buying that low-cost index fund ETF, of course, you're going to need a broker, and don't go and spend all this money going to a financial institution. You can get an online discount broker really, really easy. It's going to take 30 to 60 minutes online, filling out some application forms. You'll need, your identity. It might take a couple of days for all the security background checks to get done, and then you can transfer some money into your brokerage account, and you can be buying those index funds in your name as easy as that. If you are interested to get started, or that's that limiting step for you now, jump onto captainfire.com. There's a pretty comprehensive guide about how to start investing in the stock market. So, of course, the last step 8, is managing your portfolio. So you're going to regularly have to add a bit more fuel to the fire if you want to reach fire, as per your investment strategy. So don't forget, periodically go back to step 1 and work your way down the list again, looking for improvements each time. I've lost track of the amount of times I've gone through this procedure iteratively, learned more, realised, hey, maybe I should look at something else. When I was trying to pick stocks and thought I could beat the market, to now where I know that if I invest in index funds, I am the market, and it's so much easier, so much less stress. So educate yourself and work your way back down the list. It might take you a few iterations to actually work out what kind of investor you are. So what is your risk tolerance? How much effort are you prepared to put into an investment? Those kind of things you only find that out with experience. So, last step 8, manage your portfolio. So, for me personally, I have a regular investment strategy where, if I have any money, I just lump sum invest that into index funds straight away. Now, you can read some papers. I've got links on the site. That is statistically the best way to earn more money, is to, whenever you have money, lump sum invest it. Okay. The flip side to that is dollar cost averaging, or slowly drip feeding your money into the market. So that's a bit of a risk avoidance measure. So that's, you're worried about, say you invest everything and the market drops and, oh no, I've lost all this money. Well, first of all, if you're worried about that, maybe you shouldn't be investing, because smart investors know that they're investing for the long haul. And if you're investing for overnight gains, you really have to understand that financial independence is not a quick get-rich-quick scheme. Okay, it's boring, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So my strategy is, if I get any windfall, if that's a dividend, if that's a extra payout from work, or I sell something, that goes straight into the brokerage account, ready for my fortnightly investment decision. So that leads me to the next thing, which is when I get my pay, the first thing I do is I take out a chunk of it and set that aside for investing. So I regularly buy, and at the moment I'm trying to buy $3,000 of index funds each paycheck. Doesn't always work out that way. Unfortunately, life sometimes gets in the way. Got whacked with a pretty horrendous fine recently, and been a few weddings, so lots of expenses for gifts and travel. But I love that. That having my finances the way it is gives me the choice that that's not an issue, that can be paid, and I don't have to resort to a credit card or borrowing money. So that regular investment, now that if you think about it, that's actually a form of dollar cost averaging, but it's also lump sum investing, because you're investing the money as soon as you get it. And, that's the best way to go. And, you can see I've got links to, I think I mentioned it before, Morningstar and also Vanguard research. Their statisticians have done some pretty awesome analysis to show you the numbers, and basically over time, with many different case studies and examples, why getting your money invested early is in your best interests. When you're looking at managing your portfolio as well, you're going to need some tools to administrate it. I'd recommend you look at ShareSite for Australian shares. It's a pretty awesome tool. As long as you've got less than 10 holdings, it's completely free. It does everything for me, generates my tax returns, all my portfolio. It's a real schmick, and there's links to that on the website if you're interested. So with those 8 steps, you can pretty much set yourself up for financial independence. So I guess the next step is, how long do you have to do it for? So there is a pretty cool graphic on the website which kind of just shows you just how much or just how long rather you need to invest, and just how much you need to save to reach financial independence. So, for example, the national savings rate across Western societies, so I'm talking US, Canada, Australia, the UK, is actually under 10%. So using the example of a savings rate of 10%, it would actually take you over 50 years if you are going to retire. Okay, that's pretty horrendous. So normally people are tucking away money into their retirement accounts, whether that's their 401k, their IRAs, or superannuation, which isn't all that much, but it usually boosts them to about a 20% savings rate, which is still around 37 years of working until retirement. That's your typical finish studying, finish school, get a job and work until you're 60, 65 years old, and then you get your free time when you're old. So that never really sat well with me. It never made a lot of sense. Like, why would I spend my whole life working for someone else, for someone's business, making someone else rich, and then what have I got to show for it at the end? So, that never really stuck right by me. So when I discovered FIRE and started reading Mr. Money Moustache, it really it changed the way I really thought about working. So, and it made me feel like a lot happier that, oh wow, there's actually people that share this kind of mindset. So, having a look at the working years until retirement graph, if you can save 100% of your wage, somehow you're living for free, and that means you can retire right now. But more realistically, if you've got a 50% savings rate, which means you're able to live on half of your income, if you work for 17 years, the growth of the investments or the growth of the assets that you've bought with the other half of your income over 17 years, that will provide you enough of a big of enough portfolio to retire safely at 4%, which is pretty amazing. And if you boost your savings rate even higher, so you're a bit more mindful about your spending, you cut back on some of the excess and some of the things that you don't really need, and you can start boosting that savings rate, you can really get that number down. So for me personally, my savings rate I'm targeting is 80%, and 80% savings rate equates to just under 6 years of working until retirement. Now, of course, that's just a fairly rough calculator, and you might not want to live as frugally in your retirement as you are now, as you're building up towards FIRE. So an alternative way of calculating this is to basically look at what is your goal or what is your projected level of spending in retirement. You can work out your budget. You can look at how much you're spending per week and per fortnight, and then you want to carry that out over the course of a year. You need to make sure you include a lot of things which you might not think about in your day-to-day spending. So obviously you've got to include food and accommodation and transport, but you might also need to include additional health insurance. As you get older, that cost is going to increase. All those annual bills which you might not pay on a fortnightly basis, you're going to have to really consider all of those. So thankfully, when you're on the path to FI, you're generally pretty aware of all of these bills. So you want to take your annual living costs, and a really simple, rough way of doing this is just multiply it by 25. And that will give you your FI number, or the amount of assets that you need invested for you to have hit FI. So as a rough example, if your annual living costs are $40,000, then you need 40,000 times 25, which is $1 million invested in your portfolio. And if you had $1 million invested in, say a diversified ultra low cost index fund, then you can live off the dividends. And if you drew that down at a 4% safe withdrawal rate, you will never run out of money for the rest of your life. Now, this 4% safe withdrawal rate, or that, how we multiply it by 25, that's based on an internationally recognized study called the Trinity study, which basically gives you a 95% chance that over a 30-year period, your portfolio is going to survive all economic downturns and continue to provide you passive income during your retirement, adjusted for inflation. So, remember again, you don't have to be invested purely in stock market ETFs. There are a huge number of smart people that have been able to reach FI using property and other investment strategies. So you really, like we said, you just refer to that step one of educating yourself and coming up with a strategy and goals, and that that's going to be a huge step towards reaching financial independence. So a big part of any financial independence strategy, though, is a large cash buffer. So while you are working and building the portfolio, we recommended having at least $2,000 in a emergency fund, and then over time boosting that to a reasonable level. So some suggest 3 months worth of wages, some suggest 6 months worth of wages. It's a really personal choice. You're just going to have to figure out what is right for you. Me personally, when I look at if I was to retire early, I'd probably want to keep at least a year or maybe even 2 years worth of cash on hand as a buffer, just in case there was a stock market downturn, so that I didn't have to sell my shares at a loss or crystallize selling them at a discount. Ideally, if there is a loss, if there is a stock market downturn, you just want to leave those stocks in there to recover. And also, if there is a stock market downturn, that is a great opportunity for you to be buying more. So the reason I would keep such a large cash buffer is, one, as a bit of insurance for my own cost of living, and two, if there is a downturn, it enables me to maybe move half of it into buying at a significant discount some more ETFs. Now, the last tool, or the last little feather in your cap as you strive towards financial independence, is of course tax leveraged retirement accounts, or government retirement accounts, which are fan-bloody-tastic. So everyone who is considering FI should really consider investing more of their cash into their retirement accounts. So, of course, what I'm talking about here is the American 401k, the Canadian IRAs, the Roth IRAs, and the Australian superannuation. So the rules on these tax leveraged retirement accounts, they change from country to country. So, you really need to understand your scheme. But the basic principle is that the government, to encourage you to invest for your retirement and, of course, be less reliant on the aged pension and social security, they will give you a tax discount for investing for your retirement. So remember, there are different schemes that are all slightly different. Some you pay less on when you contribute into the fund, some you don't pay when you withdraw, and they each have their advantages and disadvantages. And to be honest, this could be the topic of hours of discussions alone. So all I wanted to here is highlight that, hey, these schemes exist and you should figure out which one is appropriate for you and which one you can do through your employer. So me personally, I do something that's called salary sacrifice, where I actually contribute the maximum that I can into my superannuation. So in Australia, that's $15,000 per year that individuals can concessionally contribute into their super. And I've pretty much been doing that from day one, which is why I've got an awesome super balance, which is going to keep me sorted when I'm old. Of course, I'll need some kind of early retirement portfolio, so I'm splitting investing between superannuation and then just in traditional taxed investment accounts and real estate. But by contributing that $15,000 pre-taxed contribution into my super, I'm actually only seeing a loss in my paycheck of something like $8,000. So I'll have to get the exact numbers worked out for you properly, but essentially you're saving on all that income tax, which for a lot of Australians, I think the average tax rate is 37 cents in the dollar or something. You can check it out on Google, but salary sacrificing is a great idea. If you start early and you contribute your cap, you don't see the money gone, and it means a heap when it comes to your security in retirement. So there it is, guys. That's Captain Fire's take on what is financial independence and why you should be working towards it, and then how you can start working towards it with 8 pretty simple steps. So I hope you guys took a lot out of it. If you guys have any feedback or questions for me, let me know. In aviation, the debrief is almost just as important as the flight. We usually spend hours talking about what we've done and ways that we can improve. So let me have it. In the comments, head on over to captainfi.com. You can leave a comment through there. You can email me through the contact form, or head on over to Facebook at the Captain Fi, or even on Instagram as Captain_Fi. Hit us up, send us a message, leave a comment, and let me know what your thoughts are.